Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, if you're prepping for IELTS, you know that writing task 2, clock, right,
Right.
40 minutes, plan, right, the whole thing. It's a lot of pressure.
It really is. And that pressure often comes down to getting started, the brainstorming part.
Exactly. So today, we're tackling exactly that. We're going to dive deep into effective brainstorming techniques, specifically for those IELTS essays.
And the ideas we're discussing, they come from a really helpful source, the IELTS Buddy website. We're aiming to give you, well, a kind of toolkit to face that essay planning head on.
Think of it as getting you from that feeling of, oh no, where do I start, to, okay, I've got a plan.
Yeah, building that confidence right from the first minute.
So to get us grounded, let's quickly look at the kind of questions we're talking about. IELTS Buddy gives a couple of good examples. Here's the first one I'll read out.
Okay.
Some people think that the best way to reduce crime is to give longer prison sentences. Others, however, believe there are better alternative ways to reduce crime. Discuss both views and give your opinion.
Right. A classic discuss both views type. And the second example they mention is, smoking not only harms the smoker, but also those who are nearby. Therefore, smoking should be banned in public places. To what extent do you agree or disagree?
An agree or disagree prompts there. So you can see why just jumping straight into writing isn't really an option. You need ideas first.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to the first major tip from IELTS Buddy. Building your background knowledge before the test.
Yeah, the pre-game prep. This isn't about cramming facts, though, is it?
No, not at all. It's more about getting familiar with the kinds of topics that pop up again and again in IELTS. Things like education, environment, technology, health.
Crime and punishment, like in that example, globalization, work, the usual suspects.
Exactly. IELTS Buddy suggests reading things like opinion articles, maybe from The Guardian, BBC, The Economist, or even looking at TED Talk transcripts. Sample essays, too.
So the idea is that if you've read around these topics, when one comes up, your brain isn't starting from absolute zero, right?
Precisely. You've already got some vocabulary, maybe some different viewpoints floating around in your head.
Yeah.
It primes the pump, so to speak, makes generating ideas much faster when the clock is ticking.
Okay, so that's the groundwork. Now, test day. You see the prompt. What's the absolute first thing?
Identify the question type, and IELTS Buddy says, try to do this fast, like within the first 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Wow. Okay, so knowing if it's opinion, discussion, problem, solution.
Advantages, disadvantages, or those direct questions, sometimes they ask two things at once.
Knowing that type dictates how you brainstorm, doesn't it?
Completely. If
Yeah.
it's advantages and disadvantages, you immediately know you need two lists, basically. It gives you an instant structure for your thoughts. It prevents you from, just rambling.
Yeah, avoids going off track. Now, here's something I think people worry about a lot. Needing brilliant ideas, like truly original thoughts.
Right, the pressure to be profound.
Mm.
IELTS Buddy really stresses that this is a misconception. You don't need groundbreaking ideas.
Seriously. So what do they mark you on then?
On how relevant your ideas are to the actual question and how clearly and logically you explain and support them. That's it.
Okay, so simple common sense arguments are fine.
Absolutely fine. Often better, actually. They're usually easier to explain clearly and support with everyday examples. Relevance and clear presentation trump originality every time.
That's a huge relief. Okay, so don't panic about being a genius. What about actually getting ideas? Sometimes your mind just goes blank.
Ah, yes, the blank page fear. IELTS Buddy suggests a technique called free writing for this.
Free writing, what does that involve?
Pretty much what it sounds like. Just write down anything and everything that comes into your head when you read the prompt. Don't filter, don't judge, just brain dump.
Okay, like clearing out the mental clutter first.
Exactly. It gets things moving, breaks that initial inertia. Then once you've got some stuff down, you look through it and pick out maybe the two strongest, most relevant points.
Which connects to another tip they mentioned, doesn't it? The 2 ideas rule.
Yes, that's a really practical one. For most Task 2 essays, aiming for just 2 well-developed main ideas is usually the sweet spot.
Why only 2? Wouldn't more ideas be better?
Not necessarily. Trying to cover too many points often means none of them get developed properly. You end up with a shallow essay, maybe run out of words or lose coherence. 2 strong, well-explained points are much more effective.
Keeps it focused.
Right. And IELTS Buddy has a neat little trick for finding those 2 ideas quickly. Just ask yourself simple questions like, what are 2 reasons I agree? Or, what are 2 reasons I disagree?
Or for a problem-solution essay, what are 2 main effects of this problem? Or what are two viable solutions?
Exactly. It channels your thinking directly towards finding those core arguments.
That's smart. Okay, another strategy IELTS Buddy talks about is breaking down the prompt itself.
Yeah, turning that sometimes wordy prompt into smaller, more direct questions.
Let's use that crime example again. Longer sentences versus alternatives. Discuss both views and give your opinion. How would you break that down?
Well, you could turn it into questions like, okay, what are the supposed benefits of longer prison sentences? What are some of those alternative methods? What do I actually think works better and why?
Ah, I see. So answering those smaller questions helps you build the different parts of your essay.
Precisely. It makes the big task feel less daunting, more like a series of manageable steps. You're generating specific points for specific parts of your essay structure.
Makes sense. What about generating ideas for essays that ask you to look at different sides, like the discuss both views type?
For those, considering different perspectives is key. IELTS Buddy suggests putting yourself in other people's shoes.
How does that work? Like for the smoking ban question.
Yeah. You'd think, okay, how might a smoker see this? What's their argument likely to be? Then, how about a non-smoker worried about health? What's their view? Maybe even a restaurant owner, how does it affect their business?
So you're actively brainstorming arguments for viewpoints that might not even be your own.
Exactly. It helps you generate balanced content for discussion essays, and it also forces you to think more deeply about the issue, which can strengthen your own eventual opinion. You anticipate the counterarguments.
That's quite a sophisticated way to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
IELTS Buddy also mentions something a bit more informal. Imagining talking to a friend.
Yes. This one's about lowering the stress. Sometimes the formal exam setting makes us freeze up. So imagine you're just chatting about the topic with a friend or someone in your family.
How would that help get ideas down?
Thoughts often flow more naturally in conversation, and you can even use it for generating opposing views. Imagine your friend disagrees with you. What points would they make in your chat? Jot those down. It feels less like constructing counter-arguments and more like, well, having a debate.
It takes the pressure off a bit. Okay, we've covered a lot of techniques. Is there one overarching piece of advice?
Practice. Unequivocally, practice. IELTS Buddy hammers this home. You need to practice these brainstorming techniques under timed conditions.
Using real IELTS prompts.
Yes. They suggest aiming for maybe 3-4 practice essays a week. It's like training a muscle. The more you do it, the faster and more efficient your brain gets at organizing thoughts under pressure.
You start to build that mental agility.
Exactly. You get the hang of quickly processing the prompt, generating ideas, and structuring them.
So summing up, it seems the big message from IELTS Buddy is that you don't need to wait for a lightning bolt of inspiration.
Not at all. It's about having a system, a toolkit, understand the question type, do some quick free writing maybe, nail down 2 solid ideas using those prompt questions or perspective shifts.
And practice applying these techniques so they become second nature. It's about speed, structure, and clarity, not necessarily genius.
Couldn't have said it better. And remember what IELTS Buddy concludes. As long as your ideas are relevant to the question and you support them well, you are absolutely on the right track.